Hi, everybody. So we are here to talk a little bit about our last Star Trek movie, Star Trek Nemesis. My friend Tom is here.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Tom. I'm a Star Trek fan.
Yes. And we have reviewed a podcast about all of the Star Trek movies. Now we can say, and next week we'll be doing an encore kind of, and we will be talking about Galaxy Quest. Which ironically, I guess I had seen and I love, but I hadn't seen. I'd only seen one of the Star Trek movies, so which is interesting.
That's a tribute to its strength as a story. If it holds up, whether you know the thing it's parodying or not.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not sure Spaceballs works at all if you haven't seen Star Wars.
I think you're right. I think that's true. I think, well, anyway, we'll get into that. But I do have the chat room open. If anybody wants to join in, then I will be watching the chat room while we talk. And so that we can turn this off. And yeah, so Star Trek Nemesis. This is the last of the Next Generation films. You don't think they'll ever come back to Generation, do you, in the movies?
Well, the recent Star Wars movies have taught me to never say never.
Mm.
I was confident that the fanboys who were dreaming of an episode 7, 8, and 9 were delusional. I thought that was never going to happen. And I was wrong, absolutely. So I'm not inclined to think that it's likely, but never say never.
Mm.
I have a hard time believing this is the last time we'll ever see these characters again.
Mm.
But this cast, this is probably it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so this was 2002. So then there was a 7-year hiatus before the reboot, 2009, for anything Star Trek. And this did not do well critically, 37%. And yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. On at this point, it was Ebert and Roper. They actually split. Roper gave it thumbs up. Ebert gave it thumbs down, which is interesting because Roper basically just said, he said, I don't know anything about Trekkies or Trek or anything, but I thought it was a fun action movie. Mm-hmm. So, so there you go.
Okay.
And then Ebert didn't think it lived up to the good Star Trek in his mind. So anyway, it's interesting. So we will talk about it, and I have my little summary like I always do. And here we go. So Star Trek Nemesis starts with the wedding of Riker and Troy. And then leaving the wedding, Picard and the crew find an android that looks like Data called B4. The Vice Admiral Janeway sends Picard to Romulus, which has been taken over by a military coup of rebels led by Shinzon. It turns out Shinzon is a clone of Picard who was created by the Romulans to spy on the Federation. Eventually, he was left to die as a slave. Later, he became a leader of the Remen rebels. Shinzon is out for revenge, and he creates a deadly radiation and enters the brains of Troy and others on the ship. Shinzon wants to use Picard's blood to stop his premature aging as a clone, and he created B4 to bring Picard to Romulus. He wants to destroy all human life on Earth using the radiation. The two Romulan ships come to help the Federation, but they are attacked by Shinzon. Picard decides to crash the Enterprise into Shinzon's ship, but then Shinzon releases the Thalraean radiation. Picard faces off with Shinzon and kills him. Data jumps the distance between the two ships with a personal transporter to bring Picard back, and then explodes the ship and ending his life. The movie ends with Picard saying goodbye to Riker and meeting with B4, who Data has copied his programming into, which he will adapt to eventually becoming like Data.
Good summary.
Was that pretty good?
The one mispronunciation I caught was Riemann. The Remans.
Oh.
So, you know the story of Romulus and Remus, right?
The Remus was the slaves, right? The
Yeah.
Remans?
So, it's the Remans because the Romulans are sort of, they're supposed to be Romans in space. That's kind of the original concept. That's why they have a praetor and a senate. Their organization is very Roman.
Mm.
They have an empire, right? And so their sister planet or their brother planet is Remus. And Romulus and Remus were the founders of the Roman Empire. They were twin boys who were the founders of Rome, of the city of Rome.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's kind of a callback to ancient history. But enough of that. But yeah, the Remans are kind of a slave race, and that we've never heard about to this point. This is all new to this movie.
Okay, cool. That all sounds familiar. And so, how do you say it again? Remans?
Remans.
Remans. Okay. Star Trek in their pronunciations. Okay. So let's talk about your overall response to this film on the rewatch. For me, it's first time watch. So for me, I didn't hate it, but I thought it was a little boring. I thought it had an interesting premise, but then I just started to kind of lose interest after a while.
Yeah, I thought there were a lot of fun and interesting visuals, but my reaction this time was my reaction the first time, which this is the one I've seen the least. I think I've watched it a total of maybe 4 times altogether, which is tiny for a Star Trek movie for me. And that's because every time I've watched it, every time I think, well, maybe I'll give it a chance this time. Maybe it'll be better. But every single time it leaves me cold. Not hating it, not just, just sort of like lukewarm water. Like,
Yeah.
When I was
That's
expecting.
That's basically how I felt too.
Right. I'm expecting, maybe something sweet or something strong or something interesting, but I just get nothing out of this.
Yeah, I don't know. It just becomes it's sort of like, this is maybe a weird comparison, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of Attack of the Clones. It's not as bad as Attack of the Clones, but just in the sense that, like, the ideas are there, like the core ideas are interesting, but I don't know, just sort of the execution just didn't do it for me. But and I did think that Tom Hardy had a few Anakin moments that were
As
great.
in, very stilted lines or bad acting?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I didn't think he was great in this. You could tell he was learning. He was learning.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was just kind of whiny and mopey, kind of like Anakin is.
Yeah. On the other hand, I do give him a little bit of allowance or leeway, I guess, because here's a guy who's supposed to stand next to Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
And play the same character that Patrick Stewart is playing and be just as good. Good luck.
Yeah. Good point. That's true. That is true.
So, I give him a bit of a break there.
Well, and I forgot to look and see if this was his first role or it was early, very early for him to.
I'd never seen him in anything before.
I certainly hadn't.
I did think that his appearance was really striking.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, wow, there's something very charismatic about this guy. And it was kind of in the sense of, wow, where did they dig him up? Which is great, because that's sort of the reaction that Picard has to him. Oh, whoa, where did they dig him up, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, it's not unwatchable, but it's just, anyway. So, okay, yeah. So what are some similarities in here to the series? We got the appearance of Admiral Janeway. Janeway, is that right?
Yeah.
Janeway? thought that was kind
Yeah.
of fun to see her.
Yep, she has a cameo in here, and for those that don't know, she was the captain of the Voyager, and Voyager was one of the spin-off shows that was very successful, ran for 7 years, and turned in some really good episodes. I recommend it to anybody who's interested in
Yeah.
Star Trek.
I've really wanted to watch that show, even before I watched the Star Trek movies, because it's kind of cool to have a female captain, and it seemed like what I'd heard was good things. So that's something I
Yeah,
want to do.
yeah, I strongly recommend looking up an essential episodes list and giving it a go, because it's there's some really solid sci-fi writing in that show, and very strong character and memorable characters.
Mm.
I think Seven of Nine and Captain Janeway and the Doctor, the holographic Doctor, all hold up just as well to Kirk and Spock and McCoy. They're very memorable and inspiring people to follow and sort of make your friends for however long you end up watching the show.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. So there's that. Let's see. Anything else going on as far as the series goes?
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like what we were saying with Uhura, that that black kids could watch her and see her as an example, I just feel like there's somebody like that for almost every kid in the Star Trek world, which you
Sure,
can't
yeah.
say that about most franchises. Even something like Marvel is just now getting there, or DC, or I don't know, Tim Burton. I mean, a bunch of people who make a lot of movies don't have that kind of diversity. Even Disney, I'll throw Disney in there.
Yeah.
It took a long time before Disney had that kind of diversity. So anyway, that's pretty cool. So sorry,
Yeah.
what were you saying?
So they make some reference to the Dominion War again. Again, that's Deep Space Nine stuff.
Okay.
Let's see. Some things I guess I should, to get a little deeper. One thing that kind of annoyed me is that we have met the young Jean-Luc Picard before. There was a great episode of The Next Generation called Tapestry, where where Picard has an artificial heart, and it fails him, and he dies. And in the afterlife, he meets Q, who's an omnipotent being who can do anything or go anywhere, send you through time, but he's kind of an imp. He's kind of a trickster, and it's a Wonderful Life kind of episode where Picard gets to relive that time in his life where he got into a fight with some bad guys who stabbed him in the heart, which is why he needs the artificial heart. And so he's like, I wish I could do it over again. And I was so pompous and arrogant and brash. I wish I could go back with what I know now and fix it and make it right. So he does. And then they fast forward to the present of the show, and he's not captain of the Enterprise. His fate is really dull and meaningless and terrible. And so lesson learned, right? That the mistakes that we make matter and are a part of who we are. It's a fantastic episode. Tapestry, look it up. And you can jump right into it. You don't need to. You'll follow what's going on without any problems at all. And I was anyway. The young Picard in that episode had hair. Tom Hardy does not have hair at any point in this.
True.
Even the picture of Picard at the Academy, he didn't have hair. Why? And anyway, it's just an annoying thing. Data. So he was created by Dr. Noonien Soong, and they don't mention him, but Soong created another android other than Data and before. He created Lore, who was looked just like Data and B4, but he's a bad guy. He's just evil. He's like a sociopath, a psychopath actually. Very deceptive and very antisocial. Yeah, a really interesting kind of character. So Brent Spiner got to do a lot of neat things with playing the different Soong androids. throughout the series and these movies. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. And let's see. Oh, and also for next gen fans, Wesley has a very brief cameo in the wedding scene
Oh,
at the
okay.
beginning. He's there. He doesn't have any lines. He's barely on camera, but he's present. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it there.
Cool. Yeah. So and they do have the Romulans in the Next Generation.
Oh, the Romulans go back to the original series. They're an
Okay.
old enemy. Yep.
Have we seen them in a movie before? Am I
No, we have
forgetting?
not. This was their big shot on the big screen. Well, they were kind of in 2009.
Right. They're a Banner
Uh,
character.
but they weren't really dealing with the Romulan Empire. They were dealing with a rogue Romulan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Sounds great.
And
And
and one other thing I guess you need to understand about the Romulans, I think we've covered this before, is that the Romulans are kind of cousins of the Vulcans. That they are genetically related to each other.
okay.
And so Romulans are kind of Vulcans without the self-control and logic and all the stuff that makes them Vulcan. They're passionate, they're arrogant, they're scheming. Those are some of the characteristics that they're known for, right?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so there's Klingons, Borgs, Vulcans. Those are the main ones, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Main groups. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I noticed you're wearing a Star Wars shirt, and I have to laugh because I now that I've seen all of the Star Trek movies and all of the Star Wars movies, I feel very confident in saying that rivalry is really stupid.
Yes.
So I'm glad you were wearing that shirt. It reminded me to point that out because they really are so different.
Yeah, it's apples and
so
oranges.
different.
If there ever was such a thing.
Yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, just one's sci-fi, and I would say that Star Trek is sci-fi, and then it with different flavors depending on the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and the
But
dilemmas on Star Trek
yeah,
are ethical rather than moral.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just I don't know. They're just totally different. Totally
Yeah.
different. They're more about the society as a whole. Where aside from maybe you could make the argument about the prequels, but Star Wars in general is about the individual journey of these individual players. You know, as they go.
Well, they both do both. I think Star Trek is at its best when it's talking about bigger issues, and
Yeah.
Star Wars is at its best when it's doing the individual journey. But they both dabble in the other.
That's true.
And actually, I think that might be one of the weaknesses here because they do make it so very personal. In fact, it might be a little too personal.
It's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, well, we start off with the wedding between Troy and Riker. Of course, last time we had the bathtub scene, which cracked me up. And this time we get the wedding. And I don't know, did that do anything for you? Was that fun for you as a fan to see the wedding? Can you hear me?
You've been cutting out.
Oh, really? Shoot.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I gather that you said the wedding scene is a lot of fun, and I agree.
Yeah, I was just wondering what that did for you. Did you like it as a fan?
It was I did. It's a lot of fun because it's their family, right? And so it's a good moment to bring us into the family. One thing I noticed about Picard that I thought was interesting about this one that I'd never noticed before is that Picard is more informal and warm and childlike than we'd ever seen him. And I can see now a story arc for Picard in terms, or at least a character arc, if not a story arc.
Yeah.
Where in Generations, he realizes that he needs to stop getting in his own way. and he needs to live his life more fully and in a more holistic kind of way. And that's reinforced in Insurrection, where he meets the Baku. He feels young again. He's doing the samba in his quarters instead of just brooding over Beethoven. And he's starting. He starts dating a little bit, and he just starts to loosen up and become a little bit more of a whole person, and a little less starch in his uniform than there used to be. And I really noticed that this time, and I really enjoyed it. I really like the Picard that Patrick Stewart plays. I just wish that this Picard had been given a better story or a better adventure.
That makes sense. I mean, it does feel like a sense of family at the wedding, and you do have the chemistry, I think, between everybody, and you get the nice toast from Picard to them, and so yeah, I
like
think
that
it works.
a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so then my next question was: so they find the B4 that looks like Data. And so my question was, did that interest you at all, or did that give a lot of clues that Data was going to die? Because I just felt like, okay, we have a bonus Data. Now I know what's going to happen.
Like you read the tea leaves and knew right away. I was kind of like, well, where are they going with this? And I thought that the laughs they were trying to get from with B4 were a little bit cheap. He struck me as a little bit broad a character, and I wasn't really all that charmed by him from day one. I was never taken with the idea of there being another android, yet another one.
I don't think that Brent Spiner's strength is comedy. I think he's pretty good at being sincere and but in like Independence Day and then Independence Day Resurgence, his comedic moments I don't think work at all. And I mean, this is the only thing I've seen him in is those two movies plus these movies, and I just think he seems to work better when he's more of a dramatic actor, more trying to be sincere and honest. And
I think he can be funny. I thought he's had some great moments in some of the movies. I think in Insurrection he had some nice moments. I think his jokes, they're not, most of the jokes didn't land, but the ones that did were his. Not that all his landed, but you see what I'm getting at.
Right. All right.
So I think I don't think he's a comic genius, but it's fun to see that side of him, because actually through the series he isn't that funny a character. They don't play him for laughs. He's not the class clown, right? In the series, in the movies he kind of is.
Okay, that makes sense. Nice to change it up for him, I guess. So let's talk about, well, and one thing with the having the bonus Data is I've been thinking about it a lot, and I saw there's this critic named Alfonso Duralde, and he was saying on the show that I was listening to that we've lost the bravery, even in good movies, to not have a happy ending. And I just look at something where you compare the boldness of the ending of Wrath of Khan with this, and that I think it's kind of true. I can't think of hardly any, even a movie like The Revenant that was like super grim and dismal. They kind of have to give it a happy ending. Like, it's hard to think of a single movie.
And a song to hum as you bounce out down the aisle on your way out. Yeah.
I was thinking about that was one of my problems with Kubo and the Two Strings. I loved the movie, absolutely loved it, but they couldn't end it on a more bittersweet ending. They had to give it a happier ending, and I don't know. I just think about that a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot ever since I heard him say that. I'm like, that is so true.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think of Shinzon? We've already talked a little bit about it, but Tom Hardy's performance, the concept of the character, do do you like this idea of there being a clone of Picard?
I think it's
As a
interesting
concept?
because it's totally what the Romulans would do. That is absolutely
Oh,
a Romulan
interesting.
move. Yeah, that's them up and down. It makes perfect sense. There's nothing incongruous about his existence or like what? No, that makes no sense. No, it does. That's something the Romulans would pull.
Okay.
So there's that. There's that aspect of it. I do like the idea, and the thing I think. Well, I think where this breaks down a little bit is that Star Trek has done the doubles thing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Where you have the evil version of a character. They did it at least twice in the original series,
Mm-hmm. The
and
Enemy
that
Within.
was 79 episodes.
Yeah, I just saw The Enemy Within not too long ago.
Right, and another classic is Mirror Mirror, where the transporter accident lands them in a parallel universe where the Federation is not the Federation; it's the Terran Empire, and they're not on a mission of peace and exploration; they're on a mission of conquest. And it's a brutal authoritarian regime that they labor under, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's nasty. And Spock has a Van Dyke, which shows you that he's evil, you know. And actually, even now, that's a trope that if suddenly you show up with a Van Dyke, you're the evil version of yourself. It's actually it's a lot of fun. But anyway, the point is that Star Trek has done that a lot. Even in Star Trek VI, Martia, the shapeshifter, turns into Kirk, and Kirk is fighting with himself.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. You're right.
So it's by now by Star Trek by the last of the by this Star Trek movie, which is I think the 10th in the series. It's a tired, ham-fisted trope, and they walked right into it. They just as if they had never seen any of the rest of Star Trek. They walked right into Picard wrestles with his demons by meeting his evil double.
Yeah.
That's so tired in Star Trek, and you know what? Discovery better if they're going to do something like that. They better bring it. It better be really good, because it's really tired and it's really worn out.
Yeah, they have to be really careful with a lot of things, I think. I don't know, but then again, it seems like we're in the age of nostalgia, so maybe people will eat that kind of repetition up. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows? Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was interesting at the start, and then I just grew weary of him as Shinzon as a character.
Yeah, the more nihilistic he became, and just the more he became just determined to do evil.
Yeah, and wants
the
to
less it
destroy the
made
whole
sense.
world, and
Yeah, the less it made sense. I think it might have been stronger. You know me, I like to do a fan rewrite, so I think it might have been stronger if we had seen some scenes. I wish the things that each of them, that Picard and Shinzon talk about, had been portrayed. I want to see a young Jean-Luc Picard staring at the stars and dreaming of exploring. And I want to see a young Shinzon who looks just like him, taking his last look at the stars before he's dragged down into a Riemann prison, or the dilithium mines. Right? I think that, and then we kind of get a flashback, but honestly, it's cheap. It looks terrible. And it's very perfunctory and thrown together. They use the sets from the TV show. It's obvious that they're using sets from the TV show. I was
going to ask you about that.
And it just doesn't hold. This flashback doesn't work for me at all. I would like to have seen a more powerful and dramatic portrayal of these two characters, and that sets up their motivations and what drives them. That would have been really interesting. I thought 2009 did that extremely well with Kirk and Spock. It just they weren't long scenes, were they? I mean, just a few minutes, but that's all we needed.
Yeah.
And it endeared us to the characters so much, I felt like. Yeah. But yeah, we didn't get that here, and we get it secondhand.
And I just honestly forgot about that whole motivation of him wanting the blood so he wouldn't die. I just by the end, until I started doing my summary, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was that. Like I just got all sort of. It just became overwhelmed with his desire to kill everyone.
Yeah, well, and I noticed too there was some shoddy script supervision in there because sometimes Shinzon looks sick and sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, is he
Yeah,
sick or not?
that's right. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Um, yeah, so he was kind of an inconsistent villain, I would
Mhm.
say, and a little annoying at times.
Right, and
Um,
and his predatory, the whole rape thing with Counselor Troy.
yeah, that was my next question. Uh, so we get that scene where he is telepathed into Riker, and
Mhm.
that's a pretty adult scene for Star Trek.
Oh, very, yeah.
Yeah, I
I
was.
made sure to watch that when my kiddo was in bed.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I guess.
Yeah, it didn't feel. Well, this is one thing that adds up to one of the little things in the column that all adds up to this movie doesn't feel like Star Trek.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
because yeah, that kind of love scene done. I mean, not that Star Trek doesn't do sexuality or love scenes in its dramatic, goings on, but the
Mm-hmm.
way that it's done is it's done in a certain kind of way.
Yeah. It's pretty shocking. In a way, I thought it did work in kind of jolting me out of my,
Well, yeah.
kind of my thing, but in a way, it didn't really work because I don't know. I just hadn't. It just kind of came out of nowhere,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know. I just felt like, yeah, it didn't feel like Star Trek. It didn't feel like it was part of the story enough. It didn't. I don't know. It just felt gratuitous.
Uh, well, yeah, and I think you could argue a little bit sexist because
Yes.
yet again, Counselor Troy is made a rape victim, which poor Counselor Troy. She's kind of a character that the writers had a hard time knowing what to do with her. Um, and it was uh, one of the things they tried was making her a rape victim. Um, and
Yeah.
excuse me, in a few different episodes
Oh,
where there were
interesting. I
stories
didn't know
about
that.
her, and it's not literal, but pretty much that's what happens to her, right?
Yeah.
Like this. And I thought it was a little bit. It felt un-Star Trek that she would just be motivated by revenge to get him back. Uh, that whole scene where remember me, and
Yeah.
um,
You're right.
yeah, it didn't feel very Star Trek to me. Not that I begrudge her feelings, right?
Right.
Or that, or any of that. But in terms of just the story, the context of telling this story, it didn't feel like a Star Trek or Federation kind of thing to do.
Yeah, and maybe if we'd spent more time with her, we'd really gotten to know her a little bit more as far as what was going on in her head and things, then maybe it might have. But yeah, I agree. I think you're right there.
Now,
Um,
something that was interesting that was going on the other side of it that I think they could have done more with was I kept wondering, whoa, what is Shinzon? What is this creepiness? Because you
yeah,
being
what
attracted to
is
the opposite sex doesn't make you turn you into a rapist, even if you've never seen a woman before.
that? There is even though it is with a woman, there is a little bit of there's a trope in movies called the gay villain, where,
Uh,
and I did feel a little bit of that with Shinzon. I don't know, just the way he kind of carries himself and some of his mannerisms and stuff. I just feel like it was a little bit of that.
huh.
Yeah, when I was watching it, and yeah, and what was his point of what was he trying? He was just trying to scare him or something, or
I
why
get. Well,
was he
see,
trying to get in
that's where it
her
doesn't
head?
add up either. How does that fit into his master plan? Is he just sort of a lunatic and can't control himself, or
I don't
because
know.
if he's trying to catfish them into, oh, we were going to make peace with you, but not really. If he's trying to string them along like that, does any kind of showing his hand?
Yeah,
Um,
because it's not like Troy would be thinking about. I don't know. Like, if he's trying to access like some information from her, she's not going to be thinking about that then, obviously. And
right.
and then secondly, like, what is the point of scaring her? What does that do for him?
Yeah, that's what I kept wondering about too.
I see
I think
scaring Picard, that makes sense, or Riker even, but I don't see what. Yeah.
my theory is that they might have been trying to do a thing with Picard where I think they might have been trying to suggest that Picard had a latent attraction to Counselor Troy, that he wasn't, excuse me, an attraction that he wasn't maybe acknowledging to himself, and that Shinzon was kind of his id, kind of his subconscious, darkest impulses, asserting themselves in some weird way. But the thing is, they never gave us any hint of that with Picard. He does give Counselor Troy some loving attention at the wedding reception, where he kind of gives a very moving tribute to her work for him and her service. But there's nothing even vaguely wistful or romantic in a romantic kind of way about that speech.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So it just doesn't add up.
If anything, it's more like sort of fatherly and feel. I think.
Right.
I feel
Yeah.
like more than. Yeah, I agree. So does Shinzon's plan with the Thelaron and the B4 Thelaron, does that make sense to leave the B4?
Hold on, you're cutting out.
Oh, darn it.
Sorry, go ahead. Does that make sense? He what?
Yeah, so he goes to all the trouble to put this B4. How does he know that they'll even find it? And he they'll just like stumble upon it, and then once they find it, then he it just seems like a lot of trouble to get this gas on there in order to get the blood from Picard, and then he's gonna kill everybody, and I didn't quite get it, his plan.
Yeah, it's a little bit convoluted. Actually, when you put it that way, he reminds me of the bowler hat guy from Meet the Robinsons.
That's a good comparison.
Right, so he just sort of meanders through stuff, but this bowler hat guy does not have a bowler hat telling him what to do. He's kind of just all over the map, doing evil stuff that just sounds evil. What could I do next that's evil? I know, I'll kill everyone. You know.
Yeah.
And then I'll trick them into thinking I'm going to make peace. But no, then I will rape mentally the female crew member who's telepathic. It's brilliant. So he's not thinking things through.
Just thought a great idea of the Meet the Robinson Star Trek crossover episode.
It writes itself.
Yes, it really does. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, we're going through these really fast. So does Data sacrifice move you, or is it made right? Is it made right too quickly? Is this sort of the solution too fast? And I kind of thought about Batman v Superman with this. Because
expound on that.
Because
Superman dying and we know he's not really dead, and
yes,
et cetera, et cetera.
Because we know that's what I was really irritated by Superman dying in Batman v Superman, because I just felt like it was manipulative, and I know that it's not real. I'm not stupid, you know, like, and I don't know, I just felt like they were trying to go for all of this emotion, like with Data dying. It's supposed to be a traumatic thing, but I know the whole time that it's not real because there's this double, you know, like there. So I don't know. So that's just sort of why I felt like they were a little similar in the sense that I just know that the grieving and everything isn't really real because yeah. Anyway.
And I didn't buy it. Coming from the, they didn't sell it. These people aren't talented, but I think it's the script. I think that, I just, I didn't buy it at all.
Yeah,
and because it left me completely cold. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't care. I just didn't.
Me either. Because like the thing with Wrath of Khan is that nobody in that crew knows that Spock is coming back, and the viewers don't really know either.
Right.
You know, we know now because we know there's a third movie called The Search for Spock, but you know, whereas like with Batman Superman, we know for sure that he will be in Justice League. Like we're not stupid, and so you know, I think that it just doesn't have the emotional, and so when they tried to kind of make it feel like you should be feeling that emotion, then as a viewer, I feel resentful. I get annoyed because I don't want to seem like an uncaring person. I love Superman. I've gotten to love Data as a character, and so you're telling me to feel this way when I know it's not real, and so then I get very irritated with you.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I would love to heck, maybe I'll just tweet at him and see if he responds. But I would love to know what Brent Spiner. Because I assume it was his idea.
Oh,
he has a story credit. He has a story credit.
Oh.
I have a hard time believing that he had nothing to do with the decision to kill Data.
I didn't even think of that.
So I'd love to talk to him about, like, okay, so how did you envision this going? What were you intending to do here? Was there I wonder, was there a sense that we were sending this crew off, or or that Data had somehow completed his journey? I didn't get a sense of that.
No. That would be really interesting if you did. I don't know if he's on Twitter or not.
He is. Yeah, I follow him.
Okay. You should.
Let's see. Yeah, who? He actually is kind of funny. Who was it? I think it was one of the actors had a. I think it was Marina Sirtis, who plays Counselor Troy. He says, "Happy birthday, Imzadi." What does Imzadi mean? It means best friend, right? When it actually means like deepest lover of all time or something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah, he's a pretty witty guy. He's kind of a weirdo too, but I like him. But no, I'll tweet. Yeah, maybe I'll tweet at him and just see if he answers. He's probably sick of fanboys tracking him down to talk about Star Trek, but who knows?
Right. Yeah, he better be used. I would think he would have made peace with that a long time ago.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Okay, so I really actually only have two more questions. So what did you think of the action in the film? Because that was what Roper gave it the thumbs up, because he thought the action was really good. Did the action do anything for you?
I think it was a perfectly fine action movie, but it didn't work in a Star Trek movie. I think it's sort of it's kind of a new wine in old bottles kind of thing
that's good.
Going on here.
That's a good metaphor.
Where I just think there's something incongruous about solid movie action in a Star Trek movie. Although 2009 pulled that off, I think, pretty nicely. Where it was familiar, a very familiar kind of movie action happening in the movie, but it was still somehow a Star Trek. Still somehow a Star Trek movie. Yeah. But maybe it's just because it's the actors and characters and the setting that we've been following for 3 other movies, so it violated that. It violated its own genre, I guess. If the 4th J.J. Abrams Star Trek film does something that feels more like these next-gen films, that will feel incongruous. That will feel off.
Yeah.
They need to be true to what once you've started, you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making any sense. Once you've started...
you have to be tonally consistent when you're doing...
Yes.
And that is... Star Trek does tend to, like when I saw 4 and I was like, what is going on with tone here? But I guess by that they had earned it, I feel like, a little more than this cast has. they'd earned a fun outing, a nice little break.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and actually, I think that would have been a great choice for the something like that would have been a great choice for this last film, for something that's just kind of wacky and goofy and fun, and I think everybody would have appreciated that. But yeah, you know, it's I think like a lot of Hollywood movies, this was sort of death by committee.
Yeah.
I think you had a lot of people who had cool ideas, bringing the Romulans in finally, which had never been done before. Which, you know, I will say there are some things I appreciated about this. One of them being the Romulan warbirds, because it's I enjoy the ships and I enjoy the way they change over time, and the things that remain consistent and the things that the design elements that come back, and stuff like that. And so I noticed things like that I enjoyed. I liked another thing I liked along those lines was I loved seeing a Romulan Senate. That's not something we've ever seen in this series before. I liked how the way it was, the cinematography, I thought for the most part was very grounded, and I felt like this was a real place somewhere, not some set. And that worked really well for me. But then there were these terrible missteps along the line too. On the scimitar, there was a false backdrop for a hallway that's supposed to look like it's continuing back into the background, and it did not work. I mean, it was the phoniest, phony thing I've ever seen. And it's not on the screen long, but it was long enough for me to pull me out of the action and go, oh, look at that terrible backdrop.
Yeah. Well, and none of the action really, or the special effects or anything, I don't know, I just kind of got bored, which says they really weren't that special.
Well, yeah, they're special when they serve a story.
Yeah.
Right? Where,
yeah, that's right.
You know, that's what really makes them special. They were competently executed.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Sure.
But it's just a sizzle reel without a story. So
that's a good way to describe it. You're good with the metaphors today. Okay, so yeah, so we get it's kind of similar discussion. We get the near destruction of the Enterprise, and I was just wondering, like, at this point, does that even like do anything for you at all, or are you just like, I feel a little like immune to the Enterprise getting hurt and destroyed, and like, I don't even care anymore.
Yeah, by now I would think so. There was a certain amount of like, holy crap, they're really doing it. If I remember the first time I saw it, I definitely had a powerful reaction to that, like, whoa, we've never seen that happen on Star Trek before, and we haven't.
That was like in the, what was it, the third movie that it gets destroyed, or?
Yeah, but we've never seen the Enterprise ram into anything. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy that line from Picard where he says, you know, when I was a young officer, or back in my academy days, they had a note about one of my problems, overconfidence.
Yeah, that
so
was a good line.
He's like, you know, I'm you, I've been you, I know your weaknesses, and I'm going to exploit them. That kind of reminded me of Wrath of Khan a little bit, somehow, just sort of the taunting.
That makes that was a pretty good line. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I just have I guess one more question. Is just, why do you think that the Next Generation films weren't as effective in general as the original series films?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think maybe it might have had something to do with the fact that they came off so soon after the series had concluded, like months after the series had concluded, they were in a movie. Whereas with the original series, it was several years wait between even the animated series and the film.
Okay. Well, and I guess we have a larger sample pool.
Yeah.
We have 6 movies on one side versus 4. That's right, 4.
Which is sort of an interesting inversion, because Star Trek: The Next Generation got 7 seasons. The series only got 3.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe what it is in it, maybe for the original series, it was a little more clear that there was something to build on. There were characters that we'd met in a very transitory way week to week on this 60s TV show who maybe had more to them.
Right. For only 3 years, we didn't get all their stories.
Right. And so we could find out, we could see the moment they were born, or we could find out these little ticks and things about them, or we could find out how cool Uhura is when on the series she pretty much just answered the phone. On the next gen, we really got to know them. I mean, like, by the fourth, fifth, and sixth seasons, we were meeting their relatives and learning all their origin stories. And like I told you, with Tapestry, we sort of meet the young Captain Picard and good things, and act like a young maniac hell-bent for leather, which is hard to imagine, but we see it. So we've turned over so many rocks with these characters. I think maybe the writers felt like they didn't have anywhere else to go as far as getting to know them better.
That makes sense. That really does. And also, I wondered about what you had said when we talked about First Contact, where you said that Gene had kind of made the characters soft.
Right.
And so I wondered if maybe that was part of the reason why, when they translated them over to movies, if it just didn't translate as well because they just weren't as sort of interesting characters compared to sort of the more bold characters of the original series. Is there any truth in that?
That's possible. I think they were sort of haunted by the beige interior of the Enterprise D a little bit, the sort of bland nature of it. Though I think one thing that these next gen movies did accomplish is break them out of that to a large degree, and made them. We gave Data an emotion chip. We got Captain Picard to loosen up. We finally got Counselor Troy and Riker to finally quit messing around and winking at each other across the bridge and get married.
Right.
You know, so a lot of things they got a lot of work done with the characters, I guess, but not in any kind of deep way, I guess, except for Picard. I think what they did with Picard, and this was great, and I think Patrick Stewart's performance is the standout bright light coming out of Star Trek Nemesis. I could watch him be this Captain Picard all day because it's a little bit different. It's more mature, it's more seasoned, and in such a way that, like, you're happy for him. You're happy that he's gotten to this place in his life where he's so confident in a good way, and so grounded and so generative and whole as a person. And that comes across really nicely in this. And I wish the writers had done his talent a little more justice and had given him more of an opportunity to express that. Because I think that was the strongest thing about this.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, in the original films, there's really only one bad villain. The Saavik, not Saavik. What's this called? The Spock's brother.
Oh, Sybok.
Sybok, sorry, not Saavik. Sybok. But really, when you think about it, because V'ger's not really, I mean, it's just a thing. It's not really a villain. And then you have Khan, who's awesome, right? Then you have Krul, who's pretty good. And then you don't have no villain in 4, just the droid thing.
Right.
And then you got the bad one in 5, and then you have Chang in 6, who's awesome. So I wonder if there's something to that. I mean, I don't know, that's just off the top of my head, kind of thinking about it. That I don't know.
I wish one thing I will say is I wish Star Trek movies could get away from villains.
Yeah.
They can't seem to shake that. It's kind of a curse, I feel like, of Star Trek movies. Because you don't see that in the series nearly as much.
Yeah. Yeah, it is more interesting, I think, when you have I mean, I guess you do have the really good ones like a Khan or Chang, and
Yeah.
but I think it's also interesting when it's just sort of a nature almost that's the villain.
Yeah, or V'ger. I thought V'ger made a really interesting villain, a really interesting thing to oppose.
Yeah.
I know you didn't think that was the best of the movies, but
It was a rough one to
I thought
start.
that
It was
was
a rough one to start on. It was a rough one to
yeah.
start on. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. So I don't know. It's not a horrible movie, but just kind of forgettable. So that was all the questions I had for Nemesis. Did you have anything else about it you want to talk about?
Let's see. Oh yeah, one little thing on in terms of set design. I was telling you about how I felt like the cinematography and the set design, a lot of it was really grounded, and I felt like these were real places. One thing,
Mm-hmm.
little thing I noticed that was really cool is that finally the technology that Star Trek: The Next Generation had been predicting of touch screens had finally come to pass in a complete way by the time they made this movie. So the displays are not, in the original in the Next Generation on the TV show, the displays they have blinky lights behind them, but they don't do anything when you touch them. Like they don't respond to your touch at all. Not really. They're made to look like they do, and that's sort
Interesting.
of the cool thing. Star Trek kind of predicted iPads, and yeah, just one of the many things Star Trek was ahead of the curve on. Um, but the technology caught up to the movie, and so on the bridge of the Enterprise, they push a button and it changes. Something happens. Whereas if you look close on the TV series and you see them push buttons, they're just tapping the screen. They're just tapping this thing that's plastic and nothing happens. It's got blinky lights, but it has nothing to do with what they're doing to it. Whereas on this, it's interactive. And they've got these beautiful flat screen displays showing what's going on in the ship, and they look great. I never felt like the Enterprise was more real, and it's just too bad it didn't get a better story. Like the things that are good about this break my heart because they're in such a rotten story.
Yeah,
You know,
it's true.
Picard, Patrick Stewart's performance, the set design, um, these things that I really like a lot, are just trapped in this bad movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. It's not and it's not one of those films that's so bad it's good. It's not one that you
No.
can, that's just, it's not Jupiter Ascending or something that's just so ridiculous that you can laugh at it. Okay, yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if they will be if they will be prosaic of any other technologies. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can bet on it, I think.
Teleporting someday or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, something. Well, holodecks are already well on the way with virtual reality, so there's that too.
True. That's true.
But yeah, I really think, but to sort of helps wrap up the next gen. Like I said before, I really think this is not the last time we'll see these characters. I think it's possible that we'll see them in the Kelvin timeline. That would be fascinating. I'd love to see how their lives are different in the Kelvin timeline, and how things might have gone differently. I know there was a fan production that was aborted, but it was a really interesting idea where, with Wesley Crusher, instead of Beverly surviving and raising Wesley and becoming the doctor on the Enterprise, Jack, Wesley's father, who had served with Captain Picard, he survives and Beverly dies. And so Wesley is a very different kind of character because he's being raised by his dad instead of his mom, and all these kinds of circumstances are very different for him. And so things go differently. I'd love to see that for all of them and see how. I'd love to see future artists riff on these characters and play with their backstories, and like we've seen with the recent Star Trek movies, and see what they can do with it, because I think there's a lot. I think we haven't scratched the surface of how cool these characters really are.
It could be fun. I mean, because we know that time travel is going to be in the next one, assuming they do a next one, with how pretty much how poorly Beyond did.
We don't know that there's time travel. It's a good guess. But here, my theory on George Kirk coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see him crawl out of a Klingon prison with a 6-foot beard. I want to see him like somehow have survived that ordeal and be changed and haunted. I think that could be really interesting.
I mean, I think, how do you die? How do you survive that explosion? But I guess they could make it work. I guess creative.
Well, here's the thing: the Klingons surround the Narada just as it's breaking apart because it's in Klingon space, and so they start picking it apart, and it's not inconceivable that they would detect a life form in the wreckage and beam them aboard, and I don't know. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I guess especially with that teleporting like they have in that series, where they don't have to be like under the beam or anything. They can just do it, and and people can even be teleported against their will in that series. So I guess that works. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Because the Kelvin timeline, it would still be, to get up to Next Generation, it would still be like 50 years, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. More than that. Maybe more like 80 years.
Okay, yeah. That's what I thought. Interesting. I'd be up for it. Hey, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? So, all right. Well, that is it. We did it. Can you believe it? We're done.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the after party next week.
Woo! Yes, so we will talk Galaxy Quest next week, and then I want to do, the week after that, I want to do a ranking episode. It's what we did with Star Wars, where,
okay.
and I might actually even invite one other guest to be part of the ranking podcast, but just get one other perspective, but maybe not, we'll see. But anyway, and so we'll rank all 14 films that we've seen. So I think that'll be kind of a nice closure on it all. So we can talk about all of them. And yeah, so thanks again. I appreciate it. And where can people find you?
I'm on the internet, tgunwriter.com, and on Twitter at Elmano Roboto.
All right, I'll have that all. I've already got it all in the description section of the video. So check that out. And thanks again.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.